Hey everyone, Joe Soto here, and we've got a great episode for you today. We have Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal, on the show with us today. We're going to talk about the power of asks. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Not Your Average Joe Show, where each week we bring you sales, marketing, and mindset strategies you need to get to your next level. And now, here's your host, international business mentor, Joe Soto.
All right, we've got Mark Victor Hansen. We've got Crystal Dwyer Hansen with us. You guys are amazing for being here. Thank you for being my guest.
Oh, we're so excited to be here with you.
We think the world of you. The world's lucky because they got Joe.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much. And I already know that's true about what you guys are doing out there in the world. So let's get into it. First of all, let's tell everyone where in the world you guys are at. Where do you live?
Scottsdale, Arizona, beautiful Scottsdale. We're
Beautiful
looking right now, looking out of the Sonoran Preserve.
Awesome.
And the weather is perfect finally. It's been a hot summer, but it's wonderful now.
Well, I've had a chance to get to know you guys and spend some time with you. And so I'm going to kind of dig in and dive into some of the concepts in your new book. I have it next to me. I have read it cover to cover. You've got it here. And it's actually very meaty, by the way. People looking at this, sometimes they don't get the depth of the book. It's how many pages is this book? It's over almost 300 pages. It's very meaty. I think it could have maybe been broke into a couple different books. I'm sure you've been told that already. And this is a theme that's kind of showed up a few times in your work, Mark. And so for people watching this, I know it's in the description of the show. Mark is the co-creator, the founder of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series that went on to sell somewhere in the neighborhood over 500 million copies, I think, of that book, and then probably approaching 1 billion by now, and a bunch of other books. So I have some of those books here, by the way. So I want to just make sure people understand where we're coming from. You've got the You Have a Book in You book, which is also very good, one of your newer books. I think you have a program on that. The Power of Focus was one of the earlier books I had read by you, and then one of the newer books that one of the older books, but one of the newer ones I had read was the Cracking the Millionaire Code, which is really good. And that's just some of them. How many books have you written, Mark?
Now 312. What's happened is that because we've come back out of the shadow, so to speak, with this podcast, publishers are coming to us in droves. And what they've done is they've taken, I've done 38 major sets of tapes. It's so like skyrockets, like living your dream and visualizing is realizing. And overnight, they put them back into books. And I said, you got to finish this week. And I've been going crazy because we've been doing, like you said before we began, we're doing 2 to 4 podcasts a day, which people who've never done a podcast don't know that everybody you get interviewed by is totally, absolutely different. And they've got their own set of stuff going on in their own audience, whether it's, I'm helping turn around the country of Australia. So it is in Vietnam. They took my 1 Minute Millionaire book and it's made it #1. And they're trying to keep it economically viable and keep China out. So we're in the most exciting time in history. And I know for some people hanging on by their fingernails, we're going to show them we've been there and we want to help them get out.
So you have a secret weapon though for your latest book, which is Crystal.
She's the best secret I've ever had, and I'm going to keep her that way.
Crystal's influence in this book shines through, Mark, because I'm familiar with the stuff that she now does and the type of coaching and work that she does, and it shines right through in this book, Crystal. Let's talk about it. So let's dive into it. And by the way, just for everyone listening, you said how many podcasts per week you're going on or per day?
Usually 2 a day, 2 to 5, and some days we've done up to 7. And at the end of the day, my mind is melted.
Yeah, so you're doing 2 to 5 on average per day to get the word out about this message that's in this book, which I think, you see it like I see it. It's like an obligation to get this into the hands of people. It's putting hope and inspiration and actionable steps into the hands of the people that are reading the book. But you guys are doing it. I mean, I hope everyone takes note, because some people here might go, well, I want to write a book someday, or I have a book in me and I want to put a book out. This is what it takes, what you guys are doing to get it out there. The readership doesn't fall out of the trees. You have to go do it. So I want you to talk more about that shortly. We'll get into that, and we'll take some questions from the people that will be joining us here. But one of my favorite chapters in the book is the 7 roadblocks to asking. So let's talk about the power of ask, maybe where the book kind of came from, and then maybe share what 1 or 2 of these roadblocks are to what stops us from asking to get what we want.
Right. So just starting from the beginning, when Mark and I decided to write this book, we realized, Joe, that, through every adversity, every problem, every challenge we've gone through in our lives, the only way we were able to get out of that challenge and move forward is by a series of asking questions. And so we realized that questions have been one of the most important things in our lives to keep creating and recreating our success. And we wanted to share that message. And what we discovered is there are actually 3 channels through which we all need to learn to ask. And those are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And each of those channels is equally important. I can let you talk to that a little bit, or we can get right into the roadblocks. But
no, let's talk about that first, because the 3 channels really makes up the premise of the entire book. And I think it's important for people to hear.
Right. So, the asking yourself part is really that reflective journey. I mean, there's no way we can move forward unless we understand where we are and what we want in life. And so, as a transformational life coach, I teach people that while it appears that your life is happening outside of you and it's just coming at you, life is just coming at you and you're trying to duck and dodge and keep all the balls in the air, that's actually an illusion. Your life experience, the life that you actually experience, is created from the inside out. And once you realize that, it is so empowering. But part of that journey is the reflective journey. In transformational coaching, it's all about that reflective journey and going back and asking the questions that lead to the answers that you need. And so that reflective journey, that ask yourself part, Mark and I say there are 3 critical phases to that. And the first phase being, where am I now? Because you can't begin to know how to move forward unless you understand where you are right now at this moment. And all of the little sub questions that come under where am I now? What's working in my life? What's not working? What do I love? Have I been doing this forever and I'm not even passionate about it? And there's like 100 questions that will unfold under that where am I now question. The second phase is where do I want to be? And Mark and I find it astounding that so few people take this time with themselves to figure out where they really want to be. They just keep, moving through their lives, keeping their head down and not even questioning, like, is this what I really wanted? And we're sort of like a meteor hurtling through space that just is in constant motion, but never stopping to figure it all out and make sure that you're actually going in the right direction. And so in that phase, where do I want to be? That really requires, bringing your imagination and saying, we like to say, go to the nth degree of what you want. Imagine for a second that you have the greatest career. Your career is exactly what you want it to be. Now ask the questions backwards. What am I doing in this perfectly successful career? Who am I talking to every day? Who are my colleagues? Who are my clients? What are the results I'm getting? And in that way, when you start to ask all those questions, the answers will start to surface and you literally start to engineer your life backwards in a way. And it's miraculous because you'll start to see the exact path forward that you need to take when you do this questioning process. And then the final phase of that asking yourself part is, okay, so where am I now? Where do I want to be? And then what specific action do I need to take to get there? Okay, because once you start asking these questions, you just can't sit on the sofa and wrap your blanket around yourself and think it's all going to turn out okay, right? You need to put your asking journey into action. So you start to get these breakthroughs, you start to get illuminations. Well, you need to run to the phone and pick it up and call that person you just thought of, or you need to research that information that just came in front of you that because you were asking, how would you ever figure this out? And then miraculously you get a piece of information. I mean, that's how the universe works. You ask a question, you get the feedback. And so you need to really put that in action to make things change.
And sometimes it's not always good feedback if we ask the wrong questions, or for our mutual friend Rex Sykes says, this is a concept of directional thinking, and you send your brain on this purposeful, positive search. But the other side of the coin is in these phases, people might find themselves getting stuck by asking the wrong questions, like why am I like this? And how come I'm, what did I do to get myself in this mess? And why am I in this rut? And that's not a good part of that phrase one, because you're really just saying, well, no, get honest with yourself about where you're at, but don't dwell on what happened to get you there, because you've got another phase to look at, which is this. And I know you're the king of thinking big, Mark. And that's really what I want to ask is how do you get people in that phase two, if they've been honest with themselves and they decide where they're at, they're kind of their point A. How do you get someone to think big who's not really used to that or haven't given themselves permission to think big?
Okay, two questions there. Number one is it fits the right. Ask yourself, ask others, ask God. When I went bankrupt because I asked the wrong question, that what you're talking about, directional questioning.
Yeah.
When I lost everything, $2 million in one day, I've been building geodesic domes in New York. I built the Wall Street Racquet Club, botanical gardens, aviaries, homes, and all of a sudden, and we were building out of plastic a long time, PVC, and there was an oil embargo, and the Arabs said, we can write checks so big your banks amount. So I said, oh my God, what if I go bankrupt? And I checked a book out of the library, how to go bankrupt by myself. So for 6 months, I was upside down sleeping in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room, but then intuitively, I knew this third thing, which is ask God. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And I said, I want to talk to people that care about things that matter, that make a life-transforming difference. I was living in Hicksville, Long Island, New York, went to my 3 roommates at breakfast, said, any of you guys know somebody young, not a doctor, not a lawyer, not a famous person, not a celebrity, that's making money as a speaker? And I said, yeah, this kid's a few years older than you. He's in Hauppauge talking to the realtors. Here's my ticket. Go and see him. This kid became my best friend, Chip Collins, but he wowed the audience, mesmerized 500 people, at the end of which I walked up and I asked, I said, Chip, can I take you to lunch and learn how to do this? He said, look, kid, chances 1 in 1,000 you're going to make it. You're not going to make it, but I'll tell you what to do, but you got to stay out of real estate. I own the 5 boroughs. You do life insurance. Well, I did 1,000 talks a year the first 3 years, because once, we're all in this cocoon thanks to COVID. You need to be doing this self-examination. Crystal was so articulating. And then I asked myself to do it. And then I knocked on doors and either was doing the talk or selling talks, and did 1,000 a year for 3 years. Tony Robbins and I talked once, and we're the only ones that did it. And then people said, well, do you have that story in a book? And I tripled my income in 1 year. I did a little book, not this one, but it was Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. Sold 20,000 copies at $10 each, took in $200,000. This isn't a New York Times bestseller. This is an international bestseller. This isn't a national bestseller, but it's my bestseller. And I want to sign it to you, your wife, your kids, and your dog if you'll let me do it. And I sold 20,000, made 200,000. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I was just, I was excited. And I've never stopped writing. And
that's amazing.
12 books with my name or co-name on it.
It's the beginning.
It started, and everybody can pivot. And that's what I'm saying. Everybody needs to reinvent themselves, rethink it. And that's why one more pitch for our book is that what we're finding out with all these letters that we're getting is that when 2 people get together and they go through every question in the book, they find out they've got this great butterfly, our corporate symbol of universal freedom, that's ready to go into high, shiny, beautiful flight, metaphorically.
And there's a common theme that keeps coming out here, which is this massive action that you're so willing to take to get what you want, and along the way asking the right questions. But I'm going to keep bringing it up because it keeps coming out, which is when you said you did like how many 2,000 talks?
No, 1,000 a year for the first 3 years.
1,000 a year for the first.
Once we came out with Chicken Soup, Crystal's got a great story about Charlie Green, where I'm standing boldly in front of an audience asking.
Right. Well, and I just want to back that up a little bit because it's so important. Mark was so sure that when he came out of college and he had studied under Buckminster Fuller, this guy was such a genius that he needed to be Bucky. He needed to do Bucky's work. And he thought that's what he was destined to do. Well, he failed. And, when we fail miserably, it's not because we're stupid or inept. A lot of times it's just feedback from the universe that's telling us, you're on the wrong track. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And thank God he failed. Thank God he went bankrupt. Thank God he went through those difficult situations. But then he was wise enough to ask the right questions. Like, what is my greatest purpose? Starting with asking yourself, what am I supposed to do? What am I good at? What makes me feel happy? Because Mark knew what made him feel happy was lighting people up and speaking people, like he said, about things that care, that matter, that make a life changing difference and all of that. And like when he asked God, it's like, yeah, that's it. The feeling you get, you're like, yeah, I'm on the right track. Well, that's the only way Chicken Soup would have come to life. And think of the millions of lives that have been changed. So I think that's a huge lesson to not be afraid to fail, but then always have the courage to sit down with yourself and start asking the questions. There is a destiny for you. You just need to ask your way forward.
This is an important message, especially during the times that we're in right now. Your book is very timely for that. This leads me to some of these roadblocks that we have that I think resonated so well with me, because some of them I've had, some of them I still have, some of them I don't know that I have. And going through these 7, you just touched on fear, which is one of them. But what are the couple of the ones that you tend to see stand out the most that you could maybe give people advice on here?
Unworthiness is a huge one.
Which is your first one.
Yeah, which is the first one. And first of all, what Mark and I realized when we wrote this is like everyone has at least one of these roadblocks, if not more. Probably we've experienced all of them at one time in our lives.
Yeah.
So they're really important to pay attention to because they do shut us down from getting what we really want and deserve in life. And so the unworthiness piece is really just about that childhood conditioning that subtly, at really subtle levels, keeps telling us, it's like this nagging little thing that's telling us we really don't deserve more. We don't deserve better. We were on a podcast earlier this morning, and this woman recalled this message. Her grandmother used to say, she used to have these big ideas and she'd say them out loud. And her grandmother used to say, hey there, don't get too big for your britches, little girl. And we all got messages like that, right? From our childhood.
I got that exact one.
Right? So we're being conditioned. How dare you think big? How dare you dream big? How dare you let your imagination soar? All of us have done. So that unworthiness is a big one. The next one is naivete. And this is really a critical one too, that people often don't recognize, Joe. That's why I want to talk about it, because I tell this story in the book about this lovely Filipina woman who worked for our family when my children were very little. My 2 daughters were born 16 months apart, so it was a bit crazy at our house. So she was wonderful. She'd come in and help with the kids, and she'd cook these amazing dishes from her homeland. We all loved Melda so much. But one day she showed up with this fruit and cut it up on a plate in the morning and handed it to me and said, "Try this, Crystal." And it was like juicy and orange, and I tasted it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best fruit I've ever tasted. What is it? And she goes, "It's a mango." I was like, "A mango? How come I've never tasted a mango before?" Like, I seriously can't believe it. I'm like, I've traveled all over Europe. I've done all these things. I thought I was pretty worldly. But it made me think, what else am I missing that is really wonderful because I'm just naive? I'm naive. I grew up in Idaho where there's a whole bunch of potatoes but no mangoes. So I'm naive that exists. But all of us are naive to so many things, right? Just because we have no experience of it. So we don't even think to look for it. And that's the curiosity piece. That's where we need to, revive our curiosity to start asking and wondering about everything. Who is this person that I'm just passing by that I have an opportunity to meet? That person could possibly be my future best friend or my great business connection or something like that. But I'm not even curious. I'm just so naive to everything that's going on around me. And what other opportunities am I passing by? So it made me really reflect back and make a deliberate effort to try to be more curious about everything, because I am naive. We're all naive. We don't know everything, but that's where we need to depend on our curiosity.
You talk about this being people are unaware of what's possible in the book. And I think that people don't have this possibility thinking that you're alluding to, so what would be your advice to give people what's a tool or what's something that people could do to open up their mind and be more explorative and more open to this possibility? And you guys are possibility thinkers, so this is so relevant.
I'm going to put that with your last question about, how do I think so big? And what we say in the book is the size of the question determines the size of your result. So what we need to do is ask bigger and bigger questions. And financially, it means that most of us say, well, boy, if I could only be a millionaire. Well, maybe that's not enough. Maybe you could have 10 million to really get excited. Maybe you need to write down you want 100 million to get excited, or 1 billion. And if you break that down, we just on this with the top psychiatrist in the morning on his podcast this morning, Dr. Meyer, who's on everybody's show and has millions and millions of listeners. But what Paul said was interesting. He said, I said, let me analyze what you're saying, Paul. What you're really saying is we can only be happy if we're challenged, because he said so many people are not challenging themselves, and this COVID has shut down people with what you alluded to a minute ago is fear, false evidence, fearing is real. Yeah. And what we got to do is break through the fear and say, hey, wait a second, whatever's happening, I'm going to break through and go deliver my best version of myself. And the best example of that is Elon Musk. They shut down his Tesla plant in Fremont, California, and he immediately called up the guy at 3M and said, hey, you can't make all those ventilators. Let me help you. I got 3D printing. I got engineers. I got metal. I got all the stuff you need. He started making them, but then he also made 90,000 cars while GM and Ford was shut down. He became the fourth richest guy in the world during a time he was technically shut down. But the point is, if you are a inner winner, if you decide to think big, there's no stopping you. You'll go under, over, around, or through to get to the other side to your objective. And what we're saying in this book is buddy up with somebody, get a mastermind, 1 and 1 equals 11, go through every question in the book, and you start to have this evolution, this transformation of your soul and spirit and mind and heart and finance and life and lifestyle. And then you have an opportunity to go toward your absolute destiny, which is our subtitle in the book. Because if you're alive, you've got a destiny and you're here to fulfill it. And temporarily you may be crushed, but we're going to uncrush you with good questions, we think.
Well, I love that suggestion of the mastermind. You said 1 plus 1 equals 11. And a mastermind doesn't mean that you have to identify one that, is going to cost you an investment or have an investment to it. It can just be you and some like-minded people getting together, putting your ideas and you put your ideas together in a book. But that will also keep you motivated because you can both have something in common. And I don't think enough people do this. Even the ones that are sitting at home right now going, I'm still kind of quarantined. I still can't really go out. Some of the states aren't that opened, right? So, this is the time. And I've seen this with some groups pop up. There's a group that I'm a part of, and they kind of formed their own mastermind. And there's about 20 of them. And I'm like, this is pretty cool what you guys have done. You're all like-minded entrepreneurs trying to get to that next level. And rather than kind of wallow in all the crap that's going on, you guys decided to do something about it, put your heads together and built this little community of a mastermind. And I have a mastermind of my own. I'm part of a mastermind I meet every week with. I know the value of that. It's so.
Me too. My whole business was built during the mastermind because I was coming out of bankruptcy. We started to meet with a guy, the biggest guy with a church from Harlem, curious enough. We met with a Chase Manhattan Bank guy. And what we did is once you went in that mastermind energy, what Napoleon Hill wrote when he interviewed Andrew Carnegie, who's the richest man in the world, said 2 or more gathered in the spirit of cooperative harmony perform a third new mind that is invincible and unstoppable. And if you got in front of me and I was trying to sell my seminars to you, Joe, at that time, and you were a manager of a life insurance company, you were done. Before I got there, you had already bought because my energetic was going out because a mastermind just made me feel full of spirit, strong, and literally invincible.
So, okay, one of the 7 roadblocks that I know you pointed out that your 2 favorite, but I really like the one on excuses because my favorite chapter in The Magic of Thinking Big. I love that book, but for me, I could just tell people buy that book and just read chapter 2, which talks about excuse-itis. And so to me, this is a really important one. We tend to tell ourselves stories that we believe. We have excuses that we wouldn't think are excuses, but they actually are. So talk to me and let's get kind of real with people about what do you mean by excuses?
Right. People
as a roadblock.
Right. Exactly. It's such a good question, Joe. And I love it too. People don't think they're excuses because they go, well, yeah, I have these kids and I have to take care of them. So that's why I can't get this done. Or, I have all these other obstacles, or now I'm taking care of my mother this month. All of these things, that we say, we put it out there as the reason we can't do it, and we'll get to it later. The other part of excuses is, stubborn pride. A lot of times it's like, no, I don't really need help. I don't need to ask anyone. It's okay. Because there are some people that would rather die than ask someone for help, seriously. And it's really a big problem because that really is that pride that is stopping you from possibly reaching your potential, from possibly making that key connection that you need to make, or finding out something that you need to know that you just keep making these excuses. No, I don't really need to. I'm fine. I can figure it out myself. That's just an excuse, because there are so many resources out there for all of us. If we're just willing to ask and start to be curious and start to probe the world, start to probe the universe, ask the questions, ask other people, and really come clean with our excuses, right?
And may I add, Joe?
Please.
Henry Ford says, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So what happens is that, because I've written 312 books and I've never missed a deadline. And recently we've had some deadlines that came to us that I didn't know were going to happen. And they came like that. And they said, well, you got to have it done by this weekend. I went, oh my gosh. And what happens is that there's a law called Parkinson's law. Time expands or contracts based on what you put on it. In this case, an excuse. You say, well, I don't have the time because I got this, this, and this. Whereas if you say, I got to get it done, all of a sudden your mind goes into warp speed, because what Crystal likes to teach so brilliantly is all of us are not endowed. We're over-endowed with 4 times more talent, skill, abilities, and genius than we've ever used. And what we're doing with these questions, I really believe, based on the pounds of letters that we're now getting, people are changing their mind, changing their heart, changing their soul, changing their future, just because they're going like this. They got little kids, like we got grandkids that go like this, say, Grampy, I got windshield wipers, right? And they're wiping away the excuses and going for their destiny. And it's really exciting to us.
I get, a lot of my audience are digital consultants, newer entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, starting their own marketing agencies, because I have courses in that. And they always come and they want the tactics of sales. They want the tactics of marketing, when what's really missing is this mindset stuff that you're talking about right now. And also, you talk about in the book about leading with questions, and it's my sales process too. It's if you're going to start off any sales conversation, it's not about you. It's not about what, who you are. It's about what kind of questions could you ask them to reveal and give you information that you might be able to then gather and propose something that can help them. But you have to be able to diagnose before you prescribe. And so I always talk about leading with questions too, but I do want to talk about some concepts in the books, because that's kind of a given with people listening. They already know I teach this. You talk about holding up mirror questions, and I want you to tell everyone about that. You've got a couple cool techniques in this book. This one is one of them.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to. Okay.
No.
The holding up the mirror, it's really just being able to look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Look at yourself and ask and every context is different, but really looking at yourself and be able to answer those questions honestly. What are you really seeing? What's really going on? Either personally, with your relationships, with your career success or lack of it. The only way you can get through that, and we list a lot of specific examples in the book, it's so contextual depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But until you can hold up that mirror and ask yourself these honest questions by doing that process we're talking about, that reflective journey where you're asking yourself, what's really going on here, basically.
How do you get someone to let go of the fear of, if I answer that question, I'll feel bad?
Well, rather than feel bad, you'll feel glad if you know where you're going and what's going to make you happy. And when Jack and I did Chicken Soup, I'd interviewed the 101 best-selling authors of fiction and nonfiction, and I didn't ask them how to write. I know how to write, or I thought I did. And I said, tell me how you marketed Dr. Scott Peck, who wrote Less Travel and sold more books than anybody in 58 weeks, #1. We whited out his name, put it on the mirror in Jack's mirror at home and office and mine, and now we're doing exactly the same thing. I got them printed out yesterday that says how many books we've sold, because you got to, what Crystal's saying is, when you're doing the mirror technique, where do you want to be? What does it look like coming backwards? And you've got to come, our teacher Neville says you got to live in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, meaning you got to be where you want to go. And that's what Christ said, pray as though the thing for which you're praying has been received. Sounds like gobbledygook if you don't understand. Your mind will take you anywhere you want to go. But if you keep muddling along, excuse, I can't do it, I can't write it, I can't think it, I can't get that job, I can't get that client, I can't get that career, I can't build my agency, then that's what you'll have. But if you say, I'm going to have the most magnificent agency ever, I'm going to have the best digital marketing ever in history, I'm going to make more money than I've ever even thought possible, I'm going to have the best employees and partners and spouse, and you start going there, that's what manifests.
And can I just add something to that, to the holding up the mirror questions? It's like, what I tell people is the truth will set you free. And I know sometimes it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself. It's hard to look at what's going wrong, but you have to identify. It's not about, criticizing yourself or condemning yourself. It's about getting to a truth point, because you can't, otherwise you're living in illusion, and you'll just flounder and flounder and flounder. And the truth, it's stark sometimes. It's like, I tell this story about, when I was very young, one of my most difficult situations was when I was 16 years old. High school was easy for me, so I accelerated my curriculum and graduated at age 16 from high school and married a guy 5 years older than I. Not a great life plan, right? So 2.5 years later, I'm in a city all by myself with a baby on my hip, no job, I'm divorced. I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life, literally. So I did the only thing I could think of, and that was to apply for food stamps. So I'm standing in line that day ready to exchange my food stamps for my groceries and diapers. And all of a sudden I'm standing there, and it was like this epiphany just hit me. It was like a light was shining on my head, and a question dropped into my mind, and it was like, how did I get here? And followed by a second question that was, are you doing everything you can to get out of this situation, or are you taking the easy way out? And it was so profound. I heard that question in my mind, and I was like, I knew the answer. I knew exactly that I wasn't doing everything I could. I was taking the easy way out. And it created this fierceness inside of me, because it was my moment of truth, because the truth will set you free. And as this all happened in a nanosecond, but for me, it was like time slowed down. And as I was turning those food stamps over to the cashier, I did it with so much fierceness. She probably thought I was angry or something, but I didn't say it, but I was thinking, this will not be my future. So I went home and I started asking myself more questions, because I didn't have any answers, but I had a lot of questions. And so I just started asking, like, how can I make money tomorrow? How can I pull myself out of this huge rut? How can I change my life? Who would hire me with the skills that I have? Fortunately, I'd worked from a young age. So I'd heard on the radio about temporary service agencies like Kelly Services. Yeah. I called, filled out the applications, got going with that. They would call you and tell you, give you job opportunities. You could say yes or no. So I started filling in at attorneys' offices. I was selling at conventions, when conventions would come through town, and, just doing a lot of different jobs. And I started learning a lot about myself through that experience. And I learned that I really liked business, and I especially liked sales. So I ended up putting myself through real estate school. Wow. After making enough money. And 1.5 years from that time that I was turning those food stamps over to the cashier, I was now working for the top home builder in my valley. I became the #1 realtor. And incidentally, I had gone out and also asked the modeling agency to sign me. And fortunately, they had said yes. And I ended up doing a couple of commercials that went national. So I was getting residuals from Screen Actors Guild and these great benefits for myself and my son. But I often thought back to that moment where I had asked myself those tough questions. And I'm so thankful that I was able to do that. And more importantly, that I was able to answer them honestly, because it would have been easy. I have to be honest with you. I was crying every night, going to bed every night, getting eviction notices every month. So it would be really easy. I had a lot of good excuses. I was young, mother, someone needs to take care of me. But I'm thankful I didn't cave into those excuses, because there was a better path for me. And I think sometimes we have to hold up the mirror and ask ourselves those tough questions, and then be willing to answer them really with a lot of courage and honesty. And if we're willing to do that, life will change dramatically. We literally have to be our own parent sometimes.
I have another acronym for the word fear, if you don't mind me sharing. I love the one that you gave, which I use. And the other one is what you're describing, which is face everything and rise.
I love that.
And that's really what you're saying that you did here. It's amazing. And it shows your resilience, but it also is indicative of when you have a clear vision of your future, and your URL has the word vision in it. We'll share that here shortly. When you have a clear vision of your future, it's when you can see it and it's not blurry or fuzzy or unclear, and it's something that you can genuinely aim for, it moves you presently to action once you've kind of let go of that attachment to where you are that you think you might have been stuck in if you didn't have that clear vision of the future. So that was a pivotal, you talk about pivots in your book. That's the second section of your book. I think it is pivoting to your destiny. But in right now, you just said this was a pivotal moment for you, but you saw a better future for you and your son.
That's right.
And everybody can learn from that. You before we transition from asking ourselves to how do we ask other people. In fact, let's do that. Having the courage to ask other people for something that we want, or ask for something that we need information on, or whatever, is an important one. You use the term in your book, have the respect to ask. That like shook me to the core, because it's a shift and a reframe of how we think about asking, which is like, it's like an obligation, like have the respect to ask. Like, can you talk about that for a little bit? Because I think it's a profound statement.
Right. Absolutely. So just to frame this up a little bit, people are really afraid to ask others for anything, information, help, favors, all those things. And we looked at the studies about asking, and it shows that people going into the study, their perception going into the study was that if they asked for things, that they would be perceived as being pushy, obnoxious, uninformed, stupid, all of these things. We all have these preconceived notions that if we ask, this is how we're going to be perceived. The studies revealed the opposite, okay? That if you are willing to just ask for what you need, ask for help, advice, information, assistance, that you're 80% more likely to get your request granted than if you just sit back and think, oh, someone will figure it out and help me along the way, right? So that's, profoundly eye-opening for all of us, that all of these things we think, all of these fears we carry, all of these roadblocks are really unfounded. That's why we need to release them, because the results of asking other people are usually really positive. And part of that is, being curious. Another study was done that showed, people are afraid even to ask too many questions, like, oh, I don't want to be too nosy. I don't want to be too this or too that. Again, the opposite is true. People who asked more questions were found to be more likable, okay? And people felt like they were more respectful, just getting back to what you said. So that's the curiosity piece. Wanting to know more about someone else is a great sign of respect. And when we dive into those questions and start asking people more about them, their business, their career, particularly in sales and business, you are more likely, the studies show you're more likely to be perceived as a likable client. You'll get more business. And in personal relationships, they even Harvard did a study on dating. The more you asked questions, because of that respect factor, the more likely you were to get a second date. So being a great question asker is so essential to every success in life.
Well, I won't give away the goods, but you actually give the strategies and the steps to become a good asker in the book. There's 4 pieces of that I recall, and I'm not going to reveal it here. We want people to get the book, but I do want to emphasize how awesome what you said was about, and I want everyone to understand this, because this transcends, personal life, sales, negotiations, business. When you said that asking makes you more likable and makes you more respectful. Yep. And there's an interesting exercise I used to do with companies when I used to work in sales training, and I used to work with sales leadership teams. And I would say to the management teams, this is a fun one to do with management and above, is write down on a piece of paper what's more important to you, to be respected or to be respectful. And it was shocking to me how many people, I already know what your guys' answer is, which is be respectful. And one way you can do that is by asking questions. But it is not everyone's belief system. There is definitely a good percentage, not a small one either, of leadership, people in leadership for a long extended amount of time who say, well, no, if someone is respectful to me first, then they've earned the respect back, but I have to be respected first. And I'm like, wow, so that's more important to you. And those were the managers that were struggling. It wasn't this, the CEO's in the room going, oh my gosh, pull out his hair, listening to his answers. But this is an important one, because if this is true, and if you believe it to be true, and none of this matters, it matters what's useful for you to believe here. If it's useful and it's true that asking makes you more respectful, and someone will perceive you that way and like you more, how should you lead your sales conversations? How should you lead your one-on-one personal conversation with new people that you meet? With questions.
Exactly. And starting at 9 years old, when I desperately wanted a bicycle and I didn't quite understand that my immigrant Danish father running a bakery didn't have the money to buy, today it'd be like a Trek bike that's $4,750. So I said, can I have it if I earn it myself? Because he said, free enterprise means the more enterprising you are, the freer you are. Never thinking I could turn around that money. But like that picture I said of our goals of how many books we want to sell, I had a picture of Ride a Wheel on Sheffield Steel. And then I'm reading Boy Scout Life magazine. It said you can sell greeting cards and consignment. I said, what a cool idea. Then when I looked it up, what it meant, I went to all the neighbors' houses. My mother was a great saleswoman, taught me how to sell, and I smiled and I said, I'm earning my own bicycle. Would you like to invest in one box of Christmas cards or two? Well, 1 month I sold 376 boxes of Christmas cards, earned $1 a box. They cost $2. And I had enough money for the bicycle back then. And it was like
the right question.
Because it gave me freedom. And what everybody needs to do is learn how to positively ask with respect and to be respectful simultaneously and let their destiny be fulfilled. Because questions have been our answer. And that's what we're saying to everybody now. And it's sort of a mind blower to us that so many people have never learned this one master technology, which is master the technology of asking, and your life will unfold, whether you're educated or uneducated, skilled or unskilled, trained or untrained. It'll open up all the doors so you can get all the training that you need.
You're the first person that I've ever heard refer to asking as a technology. I love that.
It totally is. If you don't know it, you can't use it. If you've been intimidated, like Crystal likes to say, most parents are saying, oh, come on. When you were little, Joey, come on. You can ask too damn many questions. Would you just put a cork in it? Or you went to school and said, Joe, you're supposed to sit there and let me plug in all this information. Then you go to business or you go to military and they say, you are supposed to be obedient. What are you asking me? I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to know how to do it. Not the right way to do it. You got a brain, which is an inventory. It holds the information, but a mind can only think under the aegis of questions. And the minute you ask these questions, crystallize, like say, you get illumination, you get revelation, you get solution, you get insight, and you'll even wake up in the middle of the night and you go, I get it, because you cannot ask a question without the answer inundating you ultimately and inevitably.
Bad and good, so make them good.
Yeah, make them
good question. This is an important one for parents. I'm a parent. I have 9 children, 7 in the home under the age of 16. And I've caught myself going, you're asking too many questions, or, that's shutting them down. But I've really learned to say, first, you know what, I'm glad you're asking. Cool. And I'll lead with that, even though it might be the wrong question. Listen, first, I'm really glad you're asking this. Second, no. You're not going to your friend's house. But I think this is parenting advice. I hope people are hearing it.
Well, when we were in Hawaii on vacation 2 years ago, we get a little call from a Gizmo watch, and there's only our little 7-year-old grandson has a Gizmo watch. Everett got it for Christmas, and he can only call his parents and us the grandparents. And he says, Grampy? I said, yes. He says, okay, I call you. I said, son, I told you 24/7, you can call me anytime, anywhere, and I'll always answer your call. I promise you. And he says, well, are you alone? I said, no, I'm with Mimi. That's the name she goes by. And said, well, can I ask you a big question? I said, yeah. I said, you still, those chicken soup for the soul books? I said, yes, sir. I sold 500 million of them. Anything else? He said, are you still writing books? I said, yes, sir. He said, ask Mimi, but can I write the next book with you too? And of course we said yes. So his is the first story in the book, because little kids are not intimidated unless they're squished, squashed, and crushed by a parent who doesn't know the brilliant thing that you just said and did with your 7 kids.
Very, very insightful. I hope everyone's listening to this. Very insightful. I love it. Okay, let's how does someone become a grantor of wishes? You talk about, the power of giving in the book.
Right.
And this is an important part of my business strategy, my sales strategy. It's an important part of my philosophy to being an entrepreneur as well as a person. So I would hope that everybody who meets me knows this about me. But how do you do that? How do you be a grantor? I love, first of all, the term. So I just like saying it, grantor of wishes.
Grantor of wishes. I know. We love that too, Joe. And it's honestly the other side of that balanced wheel or that balanced circle of asking. I mean, it's so important for us as human beings to learn to ask, because it's how we discover ourselves. It's how we bond with other people and forge those bonds. And it's also how we connect with God and the universe. So that's really important. But it's also important to balance our circle or balance our wheel by learning to also be a grantor of wishes. Yeah, we call it being a grantor of wishes. There's something that happens to a human being when we can help someone else, when we can grant someone's request or wish, or just help them or be of assistance in some way. It is one of the biggest self-esteem builders of all. And people don't often realize that we get so focused on what we want. But if we keep in mind that it's like, the law of giving and receiving, it's the same thing, asking and granting. So it's not like, it doesn't always work out. So every time I ask for something, I have to go grant that person something. But the law of reciprocity does work that way. Sometimes you can always ask to be helpful to this person that you're asking. Maybe they don't need anything of you, but it's important to be giving. We feel like the universe has this way of balancing out. I mean, God's perfectly designed universe, right, is designed for balance, and it accounts for everything. So if you're just taking and never giving, that's out of balance, and it's usually not a great result. So even if it's not to that particular person that you're reciprocating with, how are you reciprocating in your life in general? Are you a giving, generous, loving person? Because it becomes very one-sided if all we want to do is ask and pull on people. And when you can always detect a person like that who's out of balance, sometimes we call them energy vampires.
Yes.
People like that, where they're just like, they just pull and pull and pull on you and don't realize that's not appropriate. There has to be this balance of giving and taking, giving and receiving, asking and granting. But it is such a beautiful thing to be a grantor of wishes, and it does something really beautiful inside. And there's a wonderful story. I love the story about Jim Rohn. Maybe a lot of people know Jim Rohn on this podcast. I'm not sure. In this,
I love him.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy, but he tells a story about how, and I should let Mark tell the story because he probably knows it better, but a Girl Scout came to his door. You want to tell the story?
Jim and I traveled around, did all the leadership meetings literally around the world for years, and we were great best friends, traveled together a lot. But Jim, when he was a young man and not being very successful, had a little girl knock at the door, and he goes to the door and says, "Yes, what can I do for you?" And she says, "Well, I'm selling these Girl Scout cookies. Would you like the Thin Mints or the other ones?" And he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My kitchen cabinet is full with them." And I get goosebumps telling the story because it's such truth. And she says, "Oh, that's okay, mister. Maybe next time." And he shuts the door and he slumps down behind the door and he says, "I'm never letting this happen to me again, being
horrible.
poor." Yeah, I felt horrible. And he said, "I will never not have money in my pocket to buy Girl Scout cookies." And once he started making money again, he started doing really, really well. And then teaching it, he'd always carry, he said, $2,000 in his pocket. And if he went into like an Albertson store and the little girls were out there and they said, "Oh, so you're selling Girl Scout cookies?" He said, "How many boxes you got?" I said, 18. So "I'll take them all." He said, "Mister, you are some kind of guy." He said, "Because I learned my lesson. I want to be a grantor of wishes and not a thief of letting those little girls and the Girl Scout, which is a great organization, they can go onward. Like my daughters were all Girl Scouts and great ones. Thank you."
What a great story and a great way to find motivation.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times that's what we're saying is that when we're in the crucible of adversity, which a lot of people are now in this COVID lockdown, Is it life either grinds you down or polishes you up and makes you shiny and radiant so you can go and explore all those opportunities? Because we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of it fast. And those of us that are awake, alive, enthusiastic, tuned in and turned on and listening to podcasts like yours are going to go toward their destiny, and they're going to source and serve a lot of other people. Because when you make $1 million, you employ directly and indirectly 10. When you make $1 billion, you do 10,000 plus people. We need more billionaires. We need more millionaires. We need more people fulfilling their destiny, because when you have money, you can fulfill the rest of your soul's desires.
Well said. I love this. This is the abundance thinking that I think so much of us need to hear. And I appreciate you sharing that story. Some people will look at, and they will prematurely judge even the word ask and asking as taking. And that's not what it's about. The book is about what you're hearing here. It's about asking yourself, asking others to get what you want, so you can be in a position to where you can be a grantor of wishes, and get where you want to be. And I love that message in the book. And I think it gives people a lot of hope, and it gives people a strategy and a technology. I love it. The technology, asking is a technology, everyone. That should be the quote for the promotion of this when it's finished, is that, asking is a technology that you can learn. And I think it's important. You kind of, towards the end of the book, you say God loves bucket lists. I love that, by the way. I don't know who came up with that. Who came up with that. I love that.
So I went through
make sure yours is written and clear. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, Joe. I went through a really painful divorce. I wrote down secretly 267 things. I kept asking myself, what should my ideal woman be? Because, I want a hot-looking babe is what a young guy says, and a young woman says, I want a man that's like Joe, tall, dark, and handsome, right? Pretty superficial, if you'll forgive me for being honest. So I wrote down we had to have exactly the same values. We had to be monogamous. She had to be a great dresser. She had to have the same health values I did. She wanted to want to travel. She had to have her own money, because I don't want somebody marrying me for my wallet. So I had 267 things, which we put in the 20th anniversary issue of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And what happened is I never told Crystal when we met, but I could feel it. It's like once you ask yourself, the stuff has to show up, because what we say in the book, when you ask, universe conspires to work for you rather than against you if you're asking positively, like we've said throughout this podcast. And what happens is, after we got married, I showed her the list, and she was, I say, when you hit your stuff, you write down victory next to it. You don't cross out like milk, eggs, and butter, because all of us pulsate. All of us have the vicissitudes of life, whether you want them or not. And just making money won't make you happy. So the point is, she is my not only soulmate, which is what I thought I wanted, but when you put two candles together lit, it jumps eightfold. It's an exponential jump. She is my twin flame, and we reflect each other. And that is better than my dreams, but better than your dreams only happens if you put it in writing as a technology after you ask.
Again, putting it in writing is a technology as well, because people don't do this. They don't have clarity. They don't see that future. The phase 2 that you were talking about, where do I want to be and how am I going to get there? Phase 3 has to be written down. Why don't more people write down what they want?
I think they don't do it because they don't understand the power of it. And if you even look at this from a scientific level, like look at quantum physics, quantum physics basically is just telling us that you get what you're looking for. It literally, to sum it up in one sentence, quantum physics has proven you get what you're looking for. So if you don't ask for what you want at every level, ask yourself, ask others, ask God, you're not going to define, you're not going to frame up what you're going to get. And so asking is like a frame for what you want from your life, right? It also, asking, and I really want the listeners to understand this, asking is really the only mechanism that can reveal what is hidden. So if you're stuck, if you're lost, if you're uncertain, if you don't have any answers, there's only one thing, there's only one technology that's going to reveal what's hidden.
Yeah.
All these things are hidden from you right now. There's only one technology that can reveal that. That is asking. So you have to deliberately take that time in your own way, like Mark and I do. We take that hour in the morning to do a meditation prayer time and then ask so many questions of each other. We ask, if we're on target, what are priorities? We pull up our priorities again. Are we on track? Are we not on track? Did we lose focus? Are we getting distracted by too many other requests? All these things. I mean, there are so many opportunities that come up at us, and we love life and we love looking at these great opportunities. But the question is it an opportunity that's right for us? Is it in alignment with what our purpose is on this earth? And so we all need to ask ourselves all these questions. We can get distracted and sidetracked, but asking is the mechanism that will reveal everything that is hidden.
Ask ourselves, ask others, ask God. And you talked about that all in one sentence right there, paragraph. I appreciate it. You guys have been amazing. You got 3 things for everyone that's listening. Some people will be watching this for months to come, probably years, and many people will be listening on the podcast channels as well. One is you have a free book club called askthebookclub.com.
We want everyone to get a copy of the book, Ask, at Amazon, because not all bookstores are open, and then go to Ask the Book Club. And on a regular basis, we're going to have these meetings, and we want everyone to become what we are calling a master asker. And when they listen to us and listen to the other people literally around the world, as you know, we're doing podcasts in Vietnam and in Australia and Europe and Asia and Africa. And it just is amazing. Everybody wants to learn how to ask. It is one of the more exciting things I've ever seen in our lives.
So I'm going to put in the comments the link to the Amazon book link where people can grab it. Obviously, they can search for the book Ask. You'll find it on Amazon. And you also have a couple more things to offer people. You said you would give for free. So I'm going to post these up here, and I'm going to also read these to people. Actually, I'm just going to put it like this. Crystal has a free audio gift that everyone should download yesterday. It's called, you want to talk about it real quick, Crystal, what this is?
Yeah, definitely. It's called
And they can get this for free.
For free, absolutely. It's called Purge Messy Thinking, Creating Pure Thoughts for Pure Results. All of us do a lot of messy thinking, and it's all of those, varied subconscious programs that we've taken on throughout our lifetimes. And what I teach people is we've really taken on the programming of other people unintentionally that we don't want and doesn't serve us. And so my goal with all of my clients is to really get rid of everybody else's junk that we've allowed inside, all these programs that aren't serving us, and come back to this beautiful sort of clean slate 0 point so we can deliberately create exactly what it is we want. And this is a free resource. Never been a better time to grab that because a lot of people are suffering.
And where can the listeners grab it?
crystalvisionlife.com. That's my website. So please go there and grab that. And
it'll also be in the show notes for the people that are listening to this on the podcast. So crystalvisionlife.com. And Mark, you have something for everyone too that is also awesome. And first of all, Crystal, let me just say, everyone needs to have a little crystal in their ear. So I think the audio gift is generous of you. And I think that it's potentially very life-changing for people who get it. So get it in your ear, everyone. It's a free audio. But Mark has a free ebook.
Yeah.
Can you tell everyone about this?
It's called How to Be Up and Down Times. I wrote it with Mitzi Purdue, who does 22 million chickens a week. If you hear chickens at Costco, you know how good they are, and they're antibiotic-free and hormone-free.
I'm getting her on the show, by the way.
Oh, you're going to love her. She graduated Harvard in 1953 and looks 40. She's in dynamite shape. The point is that we wrote the book, and the first chapter of the book I wrote about we're going to do from 2020 to 2030, not $5 billion worth of business, but 50 trillion, spelled with a T, in industries that you may not be looking at. And seeing as we've got now 30 to 50 million unemployed, underemployed, underactive people, these are new industries that know it, like turning trash to cash, taking all the garbage. We create 5 pounds each a day, turning that around. We own a company called Natural Power Concepts with great urban wind. Great things that you may not have looked at that we are going to change the world and make prosperity boom.
Love it. I love it. Guys, we're at the top of the hour, but I wish we could keep going. I would hope that I could have you back again someday, because this has been amazing.
Thank you, Joe. We've loved being with you. Thanks to everybody for being here with us. And yeah, let's stay in touch. You can find me at Crystal Dwyer Hansen on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the above, LinkedIn. And of course, the big guy, Mark Victor Hansen, on all of the above.
I will make sure to share all those links in the show notes. Everyone should go to them. Everyone needs the Hansens' motivation and inspiration. And I think this book is one of my favorite books I've read this year. It's really good. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for being my guest. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And this is really my challenge to everyone to not be average. Go for it.
Tune in next week for the Not Your Average Joe Show with international business mentor Joe Soto.